Hey y'all, welcome back to New Slang. I'm Thomas Mooney and you're listening to episode 207, where I'm joined by singer-songwriter William Beckmann. This one with William was done a couple of weeks back. He played a sold-out show here in Lubbock, so we were able to record this one here in person over at the Blue Light before sound check. He's one of my favorite promising young writers out there, blending smart, sharp lyrics with memorable melodies, a smooth country croon, and impeccable tone and taste. We really cover a lot of ground on this one, everything from his Del Rio roots, border radio, navigating co-writes, splitting time between Texas and Tennessee, and so much more. He shares a few stories along the way as well. I'll keep this intro really short this go around, but if William Beckmann isn't on your radar just yet, he really should be. He's released a handful of singles in recent years and has a new EP set for release this spring that really just ought to blow you away. Keep an eye out for that. We'll get to it all here in 1 second, but first, a word from our presenting partners over at Desert Door, Texas Sotol. Today's presenting partner is our pals over at Desert Door, Texas Sotol. If you've been listening to New Slang, I reckon you're more than familiar with Desert Door by now. In case you need a refresher or just aren't exactly sure what Desert Door or what a Sotol is, well, let me fill you in. Desert Door is one of my all-time favorite premium, high-quality spirits. Harvested and distilled right here in the great state of Texas, Desert Door is genuine and authentically West Texan. Sotol comes from the desert plant it shares its name with. As a reference point, it is an agave, so there is some semblance to a tequila or mezcal, and it does owe a lot of its heritage to the resilient natives of the deserts of northern Mexico and West Texas. In my estimation, though, Desert Door Texas Sotol is more refined, smooth, and fragrant than its agave cousins. It intrigues the palate and offers these robust hints of vanilla and citrus. There's a rich earthiness that often sends me back to my own Trans-Pecos and far West Texas roots. There's plenty to love about Desert Door. For me, it starts with all those inherently West Texan roots. But a close second is just how versatile Desert Door can be. You can be down home in a denim jacket and a pair of work boots, just something short and sweet like a ranch water, or throw it in some Coca-Cola. Pro tip though, get yourself one of those Mexican Cokes when doing so. Or if it's more of a blazer affair, maybe suit and tie, Desert Door, it hits the spot then too. You can be a little bit more highbrow and concoct a variety of cocktails that call for muddling fresh fruit and sprigs of thyme and sticks of cinnamon. Regardless of the occasion or your preferred style, just follow your bliss when drinking Desert Door. Right now you can find Desert Door all over Texas, Colorado, and Tennessee, with budding numbers in New Mexico, Arizona, California, and expanding across to a liquor store near you. For more on where, check out desertdoor.com. There you can learn more about their process, history, and what cocktails may suit your style. Again, that's desertdoor.com. All right, let's get into the conversation. Here is William Beckmann. Yeah, I guess this is like our first time talking in person.
Officially meeting, man.
A few times on the old social media and all that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of yours, man. I follow you on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, I follow you on most stuff, and let's start off with this. TikTok is not something that like I ever really got into early on, but I get on, and all of a sudden it feels like you got a pretty good following on TikTok.
Yeah.
What is that like? Just another aspect of I guess connecting with fans, and it feels like you've done a great job of utilizing that as another tool.
Well, I kind of view it as like just a big billboard, just a way to get yourself out there. And, as well as I do, that I tour mostly in Texas. And so outside of that world, I wasn't sure if I really had anybody that was listening to my music or willing to come out to a show. But that I've got people always trying to get in touch with me and want me to get out of the state a little bit. So it's just, for me, it was a way to get my music out there to places that I don't really get to tour. And whether it's a funny video or a video of me doing a cover song or something, it's just content. And it really started for me when COVID hit and I didn't have anything better to do. So if I was playing a Willie Nelson song, I figured might as well record it and put it out there. But what's really funny is there was one video in particular that really kind of popped off, and that's what got me, few followers. But and it's a video of me and my roommate just goofing off, playing a song. But I realized with that platform specifically, there has to be somewhat of a level of humor. I think it's a really humor-driven platform, and so yeah, I always try to kind of keep it funny or do a song that nobody else would think of doing. So yeah, it's just kind of a way for me to just have fun.
Yeah, what I've appreciated about TikTok or just really any kind of social media stuff is like the limits of it. When it comes to Twitter, you got 280 characters. With TikTok, you got either like that, whatever, like the 3 minutes at max or whatever, or most things are very, very short. Most people aren't doing 3-minute TikToks because, you're losing people's sense of attention.
Yeah.
But that's what I've really liked about it is like just kind of the limitations of a lot of social media is nice because you have to, as you said, you have to be comical. You have to have like a sense of humor. You have to think outside the box to grab people's attention.
I think it's just like people probably don't watch as much TV as they used to. People watch series and stuff like that on streaming services, but it's just entertainment. You spend hours and hours, which can be a bad thing at some times, but it's just really cool. I jokingly tell people that I've probably learned more on TikTok than I ever did in high school, because there's all kinds of stuff, educational videos, cooking videos, music, people putting their music out there. I follow this one guy who's hilarious, and he's like a golf coach, and it's just weird. You follow content that you like, and the weird thing, it's kind of scary, but it's the way it works, is like it starts to figure out what it is that you like, and that's what it puts in front of you. So, the algorithm, it'll start to pick up on the pattern there. So, like with my stuff, I feel like a lot of people that like country music and stuff, like Americana, songwriter related things. That's the people that it puts it in front of, and so it's really cool. It's a useful tool.
Yeah, I don't know, like what their algorithm is. I feel it's the best of everything that's out there social media wise because, man, it has you dialed in within a couple of days.
Yeah.
Like it knows exactly what you want. If it's history talk or like,
and
beer talk or whatever.
The thing is, it's such a hard thing to like really, really figure out. I don't know how to TikTok. I had one viral video on accident, and it's been funny to see people come up to me after my shows, be like, "Hey, man, where's your friend at?" Because I did it with my friend. I was like, "He's in Nashville, man. He's not here. He's working.
He's just following you around."
Yeah, but it's cool, man. It can't hurt, is what I tell people. Just put some stuff out there, And on the flip side of that, though, I do think it's unhealthy to focus too much on that and just do that, because I know I try to keep it balanced. I want people to be aware of my music and get my music out there as much as I can, but I want to play shows for people, and I want people to show up. And sometimes it's lopsided. Sometimes somebody might have 1 billion followers on Instagram or Twitter and something, and they play a show and they have a hard time getting people out there. So you want to work. I'm glad that people are able to come out to shows again, because doing that in person is probably the most effective way to make fans. Play the shows, meet the people, shake hands, have a conversation. That's what I enjoy the most about my job. The social media aspect of it's fun and all, but I like doing gigs.
Yeah. Well, it's so easy to put that cart in front of the horse in front of the cart when it comes to the social media stuff, or just when you lose focus on what are you here to do? You're here to play music. You want to play music. You want to write music. You want to connect to people in that way, and that always should be at the forefront. It should be at the what people think of you as, not like oh, that guy's funny on Twitter.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
TikTok, or like,
it's important.
And, it is one of those things where, it's frustrating, and it's kind of sometimes like it's disappointing whenever, you find someone on social media somewhere, and then, you go look up their songs, and it's a little disappointing either on the song wise or they only got 2 or 3 iTunes songs
Right,
on. You're kind of
yeah.
like, oh man, let's get more out there. Come on. Let's,
And one thing I've always really wanted to get it, before I started writing songs, I really wanted to be an actor. Not a lot of people know that, but I wanted to be in movies and stuff because I was watching a lot of movies when I was a lot younger. Now I find it a little bit more difficult to find the time to binge watch anything on Netflix but TikTok's also really helped a lot of people get into that world too. And you'd be surprised. Like, I feel like there's everyday people that don't realize how good they are at acting, because a lot of it's like that. It's like it's Saturday Night Live skits and people doing little bits, and it's hilarious. And I'm like, dude, you ought to be doing this professionally, instead of doing it in your bedroom or whatever. And maybe that's what they're working towards. But there's so many TikTok. If TikTok proved one thing, that there's a lot of talented people that are undiscovered and might not ever get discovered, but maybe that's the way they are. It's everybody's cooped up for a year and a half, and so it seemed like everybody had too much time on their hands, a little too much time on their hands. But it's cool, man. I'm on there every day, but I try to limit myself because it does get before you know it, it's 4 a.m. and you still haven't gone to bed.
Yeah. Well, there is that aspect of just like the rinse, lather, repeat, lather on the scrolling, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh man, what I thought was a minute has been an hour.
Yeah.
Of just scrolling through, but you're right, man. There's been so many hilarious people, smart people just like following their passions on there, and I always think that like probably the average person my age probably is thinking TikTok is not for them; it's for the kids, and it's like no. Whatever you love, you're going to find those people talking about that stuff.
There's everybody on there
on TikTok, and it's
almost like it's almost like the MTV of today. Like how in the 90s, if you were a band and you were on MTV, it was like that was the culture, that was the youth, and that's to me it's got a similar there's a parallel there. That's how people find out about stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You're from Del Rio, Texas. Yeah. So I'm from Fort Stockton.
Oh, sweet.
And Of the places around Texas, I feel like that southern border is the closest to West Texas, what I feel. I had my grandparents lived down there for a while, had some aunt and uncles live down in Del Rio. So we went to Del Rio a whole bunch, either visit family and whatnot. But what was it like growing up in Del Rio and, kind of being on that border town where you're able to, I feel like all border towns have this aspect of that cultural exchange. What was it like growing up and kind of maybe not necessarily realizing that was even necessarily happening until you got away? It was
interesting, man, because I grew up in a really weird time. When I was in high school is when things got really shady in Acuña, in Mexico. Drug violence was probably at its worst, and gang violence. And so it really sucked because when I remember in 2009, when I was a freshman in high school, is when things started to get really bad. But you would hear all these stories of people, upperclassmen, they'd go to Acuña and get fucked up and have a great time, and and you could get beer even when you weren't old enough to drink, and that's like what everybody did. That's what my parents did. That's what my older cousins, who were only a couple years older than I was. But when I got into school, it got really weird, and so everybody stopped going. And that's essentially what killed the reputation of going down there to Acuña and having a good time. And it didn't really start to clear up until I was out of high school. It's like the 4 years that I was in high school were the 4 worst years in drug violence history when it comes to Mexico and the border. And so I didn't really get to experience that like some other people did before me, and even some of the younger kids now, they get to do it, and things are safer, and it's not as much of a threat. So it was weird because of that, and because of that we partied in Del Rio. We had high school parties, which nobody ever did in that town. Everybody would go down across the border and go to the bars and do that. And so that was something that I'll always remember, just growing up, and things weren't what they used to be. And it's funny because, like, I've told Wade Bowen, he's got that song Acuña, and the hook of the song is nobody goes to Acuña anymore. And I still go to Acuña with my friends when I'm in town, But I jokingly tell him, I was like, man, I'll take you down there. There's still a couple, brave people that'll go down there. And he jokes, and he's like, man, I don't know. I was like, man, I'll take you. It'll be a good time. But so I remember that. I remember really getting into music when I was probably about that age. I was in middle school when I started playing piano and guitar. And I wasn't really good at anything else, man. I mean, guitar was the only thing that turned me on. And so that's what I stuck with. And I was in a band when I was in the 8th grade up until I graduated high school. We were in this cover band together, and me and my friends, we just played everything that we could learn. Anything from like ZZ Top to Kenny Chesney songs to Carlos Santana songs, and we would play everywhere in Del Rio. So that's really where I got my start playing in front of people, was just playing cover songs in my high school band. When it comes to the music that I was listening to, a lot of it was heavily influenced by the Mexican culture there in Del Rio. A lot of mariachi stuff, what they call banda music. A lot of people were listening to that. Of course, a lot of people were listening to country. A lot of people were listening to Texas country, Red Dirt, and I was playing In My Arms Instead, like everybody, because that's the song everybody wanted to hear,
Right.
And it was such a beautiful blend of cultures that really kind of shaped me into the person I am and the musician I am today. So I'm grateful. I didn't, and like you mentioned, I really didn't notice it. I didn't think about it from an outside perspective, because that's just the way I was raised. That's the town I grew up in. It wasn't until I left that I figured out that not everybody really gets to experience that kind of thing.
Right. This episode is brought to you by our partners over at the Blue Light Live here in Lubbock, Texas. Blue Light has long been the epicenter of the Lubbock songwriter scene and has been a prestigious home away from home for some of Texas, Americana, country, and rock and roll's finest over the decades. Talk with a songwriter who's come out of Lubbock, West Texas, or the Panhandle the last 20 years, and 99.9% of them are going to tell you just how integral and necessary the Blue Light has been in their come up as a songwriter and a performer. With live original music just about every night of the week, head on over to bluelightlubbock.com to check out their schedule. I know over these next few months, you'll be seeing folks like Roger Klein and the Peacemakers, Grady Spencer and The Work, Josh Weathers, Troy Cartwright, David Beck's Tejano Weekend, Tristan Merez, and Braxton Keith grace the Blue Light stage. Again, that's bluelightlubbock.com. While there, check out their merch page. They have a wide range of hats, beanies, sweaters, hoodies, jackets, and koozies. You can get all your merch needs while you're seeing your favorite band take the stage by just asking your bartender, and they'll get you set up as well. And of course, this should go without saying, but make sure you tip your bartenders and buy some merch from the band while you're at it. That's 1806 Buddy Holly Avenue, Lubbock, Texas, bluelightlubbock.com. Pretty good chance I'll see you there. Okay, let's get back to the show. Yeah, I remember it's either on your bio or something where you were talking about it as far as, kind of listening to the border radio kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you weren't around at the time of back in the day as far as, Wolfman Jack and all that kind of border radio. And all the guys like Joe Ely and Terry Allen, they always talk about how important that was, how you could pick up those stations down in Acuna all the way up here, and I'm sure like I think like they talk about how you could pick up stations from Chicago. And so when radio was so big, obviously like, they don't have like the big antennas like that anymore, but when you're right across there, you're picking up that radio from right across the border. What kind of influence was that? Was that on you as far as having the bilingual?
That was everything, man. Everything was in Spanish. There was only one country station. There was like one country station and one rock station, but you could count on one hand the stations that were in English. And I had a Jeep like a beat up Jeep in high school that didn't have I didn't have XM radio or anything, so I was just listening to FM and AM.
Yeah.
And I'd listen to the 94.1 KDLK. And they're it's my hometown station, so they're awesome, and they spin my stuff, which is really cool. But everything else was in Spanish, and I've always had mariachi music is really what I enjoyed listening to. and I still do. But there was all kinds of stuff, even like Latin rock stations and stuff. So you were exposed to a bunch of different things, and the people themselves. You know, that was everybody. Spotify was already around, and even people that just had their iPods. Wow, I haven't said that in a long time. But yeah, everybody would just kind of steal the auxiliary cord and play what they wanted.
Yeah,
and we all grew up together, and we all kind of shared each other's music. And you heard something that you never heard before, and yet your buddy was showing it to you or whatever. You know what's really bizarre? This completely kind of, you wouldn't think this, but like that was also when, like me, I remember me and my friends went through like a big reggae phase, and that was like when Soulja and Revolution and all those bands were like really, really taking off. And so we'd even listen to that stuff. And I wasn't the one that would put that on, but I just remember my friends liked it, and I was always in the car with them or at the same party as they were, and that's what they were cranking. And so that was a new experience. And we went to see them one time. But yeah, I think it was probably half like listening to the radio down there and half just hanging out with my friends and taking turns with the auxiliary cord. Really, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny you say that about the reggae, because I feel like obviously any teenager, you go through those phases a lot quicker as far as like what you think's cool, what you're gonna, because you're trying to find your crowd, basically. You're trying to find your people, and you'll go through like the reggae phase, and then like I remember my friends went through that ska phase and went through like punk rock and country, and like you kind of go through all these little, dip your toes in all these little different scenes, and then trying to figure out what you're going to listen to, quote unquote, for the rest of your life or something. You know what I mean?
Right,
you know
yeah.
what I'm saying? Like
absolutely.
It feels like that's kind of like everyone kind of has to try and do that. What I wanted to ask you about was, it does feel like right now in Americana country, whatever we want to call us, Texas, that a lot of the artists are kind of showing hints of that Tex-Mex flair, or the Spanish flair, or the mariachi, as you say, and norteño, and there's a bunch of stuff that like it feels like a lot of artists right now are maybe 15, 20 years ago they would be a little bit timid to show off. It feels like right now that some of those influences are seeping through, and do you kind of feel that too? Do you see that in other artists?
I think so. I think now more than ever, people are just willing to be an open book, just unapologetically being themselves, whatever that may be, which is really cool. It's really, really cool to see that. Whether it's doing that and throwing the Latin thing in there, or whether it's, throwing a middle finger up on stage and saying "fuck you," people think that's cool, and if that's your personality and that's what you want to do in your live shows, it's cool. It's always that punk rock thing is really cool.
Yeah.
And so I think, and even like you could apply that to Nashville today, and how it seems like they have really open arms when it comes to artists in our scene, whereas 20 years ago it was a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool too. And I think on the flip side of that, I think people in Texas are a lot cooler with somebody going up to Nashville and doing something up there, whether it's getting a publishing deal or record deal or whatever. I don't think, you remember people used to have the "fuck Nashville" t-shirts, and I thought that was so bizarre.
Yeah.
But you don't see those too much anymore.
I think there's still a bunch of those people out there, but I think what we've done a better job of is educating the public that, hey, a lot of these Texas guys, they're going up there and writing, they're recording up there. There's a lot more of that exchange. There's not those hard lines anymore, and I think it has to do with like just kind of telling people, you know what, like that Wade Bowen record that you love so much, and he's such a Texas country guy. He cut it in Nashville.
Guess where he recorded it.
All those guys that he was writing songs with, those guys are all in like in Nashville.
Exactly.
Like it's okay.
And it's always been like that, which is really the funny thing. And I had, when I got out of high school, when I moved out of Del Rio, I went to college because my parents really wanted me to, and they've always been supportive of me. My decision to want to pursue this as a career. So I agreed to go to get a college degree, and and I spent 2 years in Austin at St. Edward's University, and then I transferred over to Belmont University up in Nashville. So when I first moved to Nashville, it was to finish school. I was still a college student, and because of that, I never felt like I was part of the scene in Texas, because I never really got to play anywhere, right? I wasn't, when I was living in Austin, I was still too young to do anything, to go play at the Saxon Pub or to go do any of those really cool venues that I wanted to play. I was freshman, sophomore in college. And then I moved to Nashville because Radney Foster really convinced me to move there, and he told me to check out that school, and I did, and I got accepted, and I ended up transferring out of Austin and moving to Nashville. So then it got even worse, because I'm in, an even more saturated music town. I'm a little minnow in a huge lake.
Right.
And my brother went to school here. He's a Red Raider, and I always remember this one time. It was Americana Fest. It was 2017, and it was the first time I ever met Flatland Cavalry, and Cleto was super nice as always. And I remember they played a show at the Cannery Row, one of those venues over there, and I'd never heard of them before, but they kept saying, "Well, we're from Lubbock, Texas," and I called my brother after their set. I said, "Man, I just saw this Flatland band, and they were kick ass, dude." And he's like, "Oh yeah, man, they're like popping off right now in Lubbock, like they're playing everywhere." And of course, I'd never heard of them because I was living up in Nashville, and I wasn't really keeping tabs on what was hot, in the college scene.
Right.
And so I went up to Cleto and introduced myself after the show, and he says he doesn't remember that, but I'd tell him all the time. It was, and he's like, "Well, was I nice to you?" I was like, "Yeah, of course you were nice, man. Come on." And it was just one of those things to where I sometimes wonder, had I stayed in Texas and been like gone to school here or gone to school in College Station, how different things would have been. Not that I'd go back and change anything that I did.
Right.
It's just a different idea, because I didn't have that experience. I wasn't able to go and build a fan base when I was in college. I was too busy trying to learn how to write songs, and I always tell people that Radney he's been my biggest influence and my biggest mentor as a songwriter, because I would, like, every day, man, religiously try to write songs, and most of them were just garbage, but it was like me trying to figure out how to really understand the craft. And so I'd lock myself up in a bedroom and do it. Even when I moved to Nashville, like, co-writing it never dawned on me that people wrote songs together. I thought it was just like, because I was a big Dylan fan and Neil Young and John Prine, and John Prine did co-write a lot of stuff, but in my mind, I was like, man, it's like that's something that I think you're supposed to do by yourself. And then I moved to Nashville and then started writing with other people, and that brought on a whole another thing. You have to learn how to collaborate, which is not easy sometimes, especially for some people like myself, that you're kind of hard-headed. Like, I don't know if I really want to write a song about dirt road and a pickup truck, But you're gonna you have to do it at some point to understand that you don't like it, or maybe you do. Maybe that's your thing, whatever. But it was funny, because once I graduated from Belmont and moved back to Texas and started playing, people were like, "Who are you?" And like, how come we've never heard of you before? I was like, "Well, I've been up in Tennessee for the past couple years, doing things." So it was just an interesting entrance, I think, looking back on it.
Yeah, it's interesting how, because obviously I think like the standard back in the day was, I'm talking kind of before the Pat Greens kind of made it where you could just be a Texas band and be in Texas and all that kind of stuff. But like the Radney route of like, moving to Nashville, guys were moving to Nashville, and everyone from Guy Clark moved to Nashville, and it felt like that's the way if you wanted to be a songwriter.
Todd Snyder, another great example.
That's where you went, and from there that you had to come back home. You know what I mean? You had to make it there before you could come back home. I find it so interesting right now, though, because of that exchange between Nashville and Texas, where I'd say more than just as we've educated the fan base as far as like, there not being that wall there. It's been educating artists as well.
Oh, yeah.
That like, it's okay to go to both, and it's okay to do both, and it's okay to be from one and try out the other. And, you mentioned the co-writing and writing by yourself, you kind of have to figure out what works best in both situations.
Oh, yeah.
And, hell, you may be the best dirt road songwriter.
Yeah, and the funny thing, it's just like everybody, man. You stay somewhere long enough, then the grass starts to look a little bit greener on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember when I was living in Nashville full time. I still live there part time, but when I was there, when I was spending most of my time there, you'd have friends that'd be like, fuck this town, I'm moving to L.A. And then they go off and they move to L.A. And then you meet somebody else who just moved out of L.A. to come to Nashville. Fuck that town, don't ever go there, man. It's so it's just like,
yeah.
Well, I got a handful of friends that love it out there, and a handful of friends that hated it and came back, or tried Nashville, or Austin or whatever. It's. I think it's good when you're in the entertainment business. I think it's good to plant some seeds everywhere, in all those big cities that are heavily rooted in the entertainment business. But it always used to crack me up when people were like, man, I'm moving to Nashville because I want to get out of Texas. I'm like, why? Why don't you come up to Nashville for a week, write songs, or if you want to live here, great, but you're going to have to spend a lot of time back in Texas to play or to, do things or whatever. And you meet people from all over the South and doing country music up in Nashville. Yeah. I got my Georgia friends, and they all kind of they got their own little clique, and all the Alabama folks have their own little thing, and then of course the Texas guys were so, we're so big, and we're kind of hard headed like that, but we all stick together too, and it's just interesting to listen to people's stories and what brought them to Nashville, what drove them away from Nashville. What brought them to Nashville, drove them away, and then brought them back to Nashville. And It's like that with every city. So it's always funny. We'll drink beer and be like, all right, let's hear your sob story, and let's hear you bitch about where you're from for a little while.
Yeah. It's funny you say about the little different cliques as far as what state you're from, because Ross Cooper, when he first moved up there, he was reading Billy Joe Shaver's, I can't remember if it's the autobiography or just the biography, but he was talking about how back in the 70s, it was like that. All the Georgia guys were together, all the Tennessee guys, all the Kentucky guys, all the Texas guys. And Ross was just saying how all this time has passed, and it's kind of still the same way. All your Texas buddies are together, and all like it's just like these little cliques, and it's kind of funny how even hundreds of miles away, you end up finding another Texan.
Oh, so. Yeah. Did you ever read Willie Nelson's autobiography that came out like maybe 6 or 7 years ago?
I've read it, but it's been a minute. So.
Yeah. There's this part, and I read it. I only read it once too, but man, I was just so fascinated with his life, his early life. When he moved to Nashville, and he was having a lot of success as a songwriter, and wrote "Crazy" and "Nightlife" and all these songs that were hits. But he just still felt so unfulfilled because he wanted to be an artist. And of course, his voice didn't really fit what people wanted at the time, and so he just had a hard time really kind of convincing people that he was meant to be a singer and a front man and an entertainer. And he talks about there's this one part in the book that he talks about being at Tootsie's, and that's where everybody hung out. Because now Broadway is just a tourist trap, but back then it was just like the Strip. It was like where everybody hung out, and all the songwriters would meet up and drink beer after they wrote songs that day or whatever. But there's two stories from that book that I always think about, and one is when he first got a publishing deal, and it was his first day on the job, and he was never in a position where he had to write a song. It was always, he'd be driving down the road or something came to him. And so now he's got this publishing deal, and they put him in a room by himself and say, all right, at 5 p.m. today, we're going to come back and we're going to see what you came up with. And he was just nervous because he didn't know how to come up with something on the spot. So he just started looking around the room and started singing, "Hello, walls, how things going for you today? Don't you miss her since she up and walked away?" And then he's like, well, hell, I figured if I could talk to the wall, then I could talk to the window. And so the next, "Hello, window, I think I'll stare at you,"
Right.
And so he writes this badass song because he had nothing to write about. So he's just in this blank room. And then he come back and they're like, what'd you come up with? He's like, no, man, it's like terrible. And he explains, he's like, man, I thought like I was so nervous. I thought they were going to fire me or whatever because it was such a goofy song. And he's like, nah, just play it. And he's like, all right. And he played them, Hello Walls. And they're like, that's a fucking hit. And I'm like, there's no way, dude. There's no way you could write a hit song on your first day on the job. And so I think about that. And then, of course, he writes a bunch of other songs after that. And he's one of the best writers in town, you know, in the late 60s.
Yeah.
Or mid-50s, I guess. But and then he's just really kind of depressed because nobody will give him a chance. He can't get a record deal. And then the second story in that book that I absolutely love, and I think about it all the time, I have a bad day, is when he was just having a really bad day, and I guess he got drunk at Tootsie's, and he like laid out in the middle of the street and said, like, the hell with it. If somebody runs me over and kills me, then it's meant to be. And he like passed out, and then he like woke up to like a couple guys like waking him up, like, dude, what are you doing? You're in the middle of the road. And it was like his attempt at suicide or something. And I'm like, whoa, man. Like, so you can have it all. You can be at the top. You could be Willie Nelson and still intentionally lay down in the middle of the road. And we all know the rest of the story. You know, he ended up leaving and growing his hair out and becoming one of the biggest selling artists of all time. But it's just interesting to know that I'm not the only one whose mind gets played with and spending too much time in Nashville, or just going back to the TikTok thing, spending too much time focusing on that and feeling like if you're not at this level, then you're not successful enough, or if you're not selling this many tickets, then it's not working. It's like it's really easy to compare yourself to people in this business, and I really have to sit down and like train myself not to think like that, because you can have number one hit songs and still want to lay down in the middle of the road.
This episode is in part brought to you by Charlie Stout Photography. I want y'all all to head over to charliestout.com right now to get a glimpse of his work. While you're at it, go give him a follow on Instagram and Twitter at Charlie Stout. Right now, he has more than 50 photographs for sale on charliestout.com with a diverse selection of landscapes and sky shots of West Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. Open roads and windmills, sunsets and stardust, cotton rows and cacti. He captures a lot of what I love about West Texas and the great American Southwest. The depth, the way, and raw intensity is all there in his photography. He captures that struggle between man and the land. It's Mother Nature reclaiming objects like rusting tractors and abandoned homesteads, or it's man wrangling the wild and trying to put his impression on the land with rows of cotton or colossal windmills or iron orchards pumping oil from the deep, dark below. And sometimes it's just the raw beauty of a mountain breaking up limitless sky or a setting sun leaving the day behind. At any rate, Charlie's photographs move you. Maybe there's a little bit of that I ain't crying, that's just West Texas in my eye, in all of Charlie's photos. Again, go visit charliestout.com and order yourself a photograph or two. Also, a pro tip, keep an eye out on his Twitter. He's consistently posting one-offs and errors and randoms on there that are available in the flash sale variety. Again, that's at Charlie Stout. Head on over to charliestout.com. Grab a signed print, buy a record. It's good for your soul. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's in this strange way, it's comforting to know that, like, you know, even 60 years ago, you're comparing yourself to the Joneses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the thing about Willie, as far as you mentioned, and he busts out at, like, when did Redheaded Stranger come out in 75?
Right.
You know, he's an old man by today's standard.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he's in his, he was either like 40 something or 35. I can't remember what it is. But it's like everyone wants that instant gratification of success at 22 or whatever the case. And I remember being younger and here in Lubbock, of course, two of my favorites, Buddy Holly, of course, and Terry Allen. And kind of coming to that realization, you know, that Buddy Holly, he had that career in 18 months.
Yeah.
He died at 22.
Isn't that nuts, man? Holy moly.
It's so early. And then on the other side, the flip side, Terry Allen didn't release Lubbock on Everything until he was 35.
Yeah.
And so I always kind of try and think about those as far as, hey, it's okay if you end up like, bloom. You're going to bloom at whatever the right time, as long as you're kind of focused on it. And once, opportunity does come, you have to kind of grab a hold of it, like in that Buddy Holly way.
Absolutely.
Give them all you have, And it's one of those things where, as you kind of say, it's easy to compare yourself. In saying that, though, you mentioned the being in your room and writing yourself and just kind of doing that solo writing and then kind of venturing out where you're writing with other folks. What was, I imagine stepping into a room with another co-writer, there's that mixed emotion of being intimidated, being kind of intimidated by the moment, maybe who it is. It can probably be where you're kind of knocked back down to square one in some sense of like, oh man, I need to get a whole lot better. Or what was kind of like those, not necessarily that first write or anything like that, but what did you take once you kind of realized, okay, this is what I'm gonna have to do to get better at, sharpening this side of the co-writing aspect or the writing aspect?
Yeah, patience for sure. When you're writing alone and when you're writing with other people, more so when you're writing with other people, because it's just a push and pull kind of thing. And the typical co-write, it's everybody meets up at 11 with coffee in hand, and hopefully you have some ammo, a couple ideas tucked away in your phone or whatever, but kind of bullshit for about 30 minutes. And then, all right, what do you got? Well, I got this title. Well, I got this little melody, and I got this title. You can just kind of put all the cards on the table and figure out which one you kind of want to run with on that day. And I'll admit there's times I'm in a room and I'm like just really not digging where it's going, but I'm committed to making sure we're going to stick it out or whatever. And then there's times where it's the complete opposite. You're like, this is incredible, and I know for a fact that I couldn't have written this alone.
Yeah.
I know for a fact it wouldn't have come out the same. And so, but to answer your question, when I was first having those experiences writing with other people, it was new. It's like Chris Stapleton once said, it's a lot of first dates, and I find that funny because it's the truth. It's where you from, kind of doing all that, and getting to know the other person, because it's an intimate experience, man. Writing, like telling, especially if it's like about a real thing. Say, hey, I want to write a song about so and so, this girl that broke my heart, like really bad or whatever, and it's like, hey man, like I just met you 5 minutes ago, but if you want to get that deep with me, then I'm here for it. But more so lately, it's been a little bit more intimidating just because of the people that I've started writing with. I recently, a couple years ago, it feels like recently just because of the pandemic, but I signed a publishing deal in Nashville, and so now it's more where I was just writing with other people that were playing at the same bars I was playing at. Now it's like you're writing with people that have definitely had a lot of success in that world, and but I'm, at the same time, I feel confident enough as a songwriter to be able to go in there and hold my own, even though I've never written a song that anybody's cut that went number one or anything like that. But hopefully maybe one day I will. But it's cool, man. It's always I have a really good time doing it. It's like trying to solve a puzzle of some sort, and so I think that I'm very grateful to be able to do it and to get those experiences, and I hope I get to keep doing it.
Yeah, it's always that thing that you're talking about there, as far as you meet this guy or this girl 5 minutes ago, and then you're pouring your heart out. There's this interesting thing where it feels like maybe this don't happen all the time, but with those co-writes, you come out of it a couple hours later a lot closer or a lot more on the same page, than like the average fan or friendship
Absolutely
does, you know what I mean? And it's because you often go to these real intimate stories, and it doesn't have to be about heartbreak or falling in love or something, but you end up like talking about stuff, like real stuff, pretty quickly. And that's what I find amazing about a lot of times with songwriters and just musicians in general. It feels like there's really never, or there's rarely that awkward stage of just talking back and forth of the, how's it going?
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's interesting seeing that. I'm drifting off there, but what I was going to say too is like what I kind of love is I've been fortunate enough to see some co-writes happen, and what I find amazing too is like it always feels like y'all get like this like fire in your eyes, and like you think it's the best thing that you've ever done a lot of times, and then later, a couple of days later, you talk to that person and they're like, I don't know about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And what's funny is it's the opposite happens too. Sometimes you walk away like, yeah, that's not really great, and then you listen back, you're like, holy shit, this is an amazing song,
Yeah.
and it's really hard to step out of it. Like I'll be in writes with people, and we'll be just on a good streak, and we're like, man, that we're like plowing through this, and it's great. And then you kind of hit like some little dead space there, and then I'll tell people, like, hey man, if they think it needs a bridge or something, I'm like, how about we just leave the song alone before it starts to get mad at us?
Yeah.
How about we walk away? It's great. Let's just not piss it off. We'll come back and let's let it ferment for a little while, and then we'll come back and really analyze it. But it's I'd swear to you, songs they'll start to, if you're chipping too hard at it, you're gonna dig yourself into a weird hole that you might not be able to dig yourself out of. So I'm pretty cautious when it feels like, let's leave this alone for a little while. And it could be anything. It could be a chord. I mean, I've gone into co-writes with people, and we just can't figure out how to start this song off, but we have this chorus, and we know that it's going to be a good song because the chorus is great. We just don't really know how to build around it. And I'm like, hey man, we got a good chorus. Like, let's just leave that there. Let's kind of clear our heads and let's loop back around. So a lot of it's that. But yeah, there's been times where I feel over the moon about something. I listen back and I'm like, man, maybe it doesn't have that magic that I felt when we wrote it, but maybe we can still edit the song. Radney always told me the only thing better than a good song is that same song rewritten. That's what makes a great song.
Yeah.
And I take that advice to heart. It's like I'll write the song and then I'll come back and revise it and try to find the weak parts of it and see if we can make them stronger.
Yeah, there's up here at Blue Light on Mondays, of course, it's songwriter night and all originals and stuff. And I always kind of wince when somebody says, oh, I wrote this in 15 minutes because, you can write Margaritaville in 30 minutes and it'd be a fucking hit. But sometimes, though, I wrote this today 15 minutes ago, and you go, I can kind of tell,
Yeah, they think they're flexing. It's like, oh, I wouldn't admit that to people.
Or tempering expectations or, all kinds of stuff. But, yeah, the editing process, I always, you mentioned, like, we got a chorus down. We got something. We got, this verse that may not be the first verse. It may be that second verse or whatever. You can apply that to like any kind of writing where there's been so many times where I'm in the middle of writing something or trying to start writing something. You kind of know what you want to say, but then you don't know how to start it off. And that's always, it can feel like you're just banging your head against the wall until you kind of just tell yourself, don't worry about that part. Go to what you're wanting to say and get onto, the body of the piece versus you can go back and figure out to start this off, the lead.
Yeah.
And that can be very, very difficult to do because I think like any kind of venture, any kind of thing you do, you think like you have to start from the beginning versus start from the middle or whatever the case.
Right.
It's human nature to want to start from the beginning and go to the middle to the end. And sometimes it can't work that way.
No. Yeah. John Randall said that Guy Clark would write everything down with a pencil and graph paper, and he had an X-Acto knife, and he would write things down, and then he would like cut the verses up into like strips, or maybe even the lines. I don't know how he would do it, but then he would just kind of like move them around and try to maybe this thing that's kind of in the in the last quarter of the song, maybe that's the first line. You don't know. I'll see how it sings, like see if it makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a lot strong. You know, for me, I really like songs that have a really, really interesting first line, like to where, okay, let's see where this is going. You know, that for me, a first line has got to be pretty. It's got to grab you, you know, unless it's one of those songs like "Just Call Me Lonesome" that starts off with the chorus and then it's just, you know, you're kind of in it. But
Yeah.
But it's interesting to move things around like that and to again to look at it like a puzzle and say, like, let's figure this out. You know, it's like we're gonna make this work one way or another, and it might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, you know, it might not be next year.
Yeah.
I've mulled over songs for long periods of time, and I've also been the guy to say, hey, I wrote this in 15 minutes. You know, don't know if it's any good, but
Yeah.
it's cool. I like that though. I like the fact that it's different every time, man. You could be in the shower, something hits you. You can be driving, you know, or you could have a co-write session and just nothing is coming to into your brain. Like it's just somebody, I can't remember who it was. Somebody told me, like, man, writing songs is like trying to catch butterflies with a net. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And I was like, that's a really weird thing to say, but it kind of makes sense, you know. It's just they kind of flutter in the wind, and it's up to you to try to chase them down and catch them. And you can't get mad at the world when you don't.
I want to break in just one more time to mention The Lubbock Way, a collection of wallflower vignettes. That's a book I wrote and released this past fall. As you'd probably guess by the title, it's a collection of stories and thoughts about the Lubbock music scene circa 2015 to around 2017. I'd like to characterize it as an insightful peek into 35 nights, weekends, and episodes about various songwriters and bands like Red Shahan, Flatland Cavalry, Randall King, William Clark Green, Brandon Adams, and many, 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 many others. It's currently on sale in the New Slang merch store. That's newslangpodcast.bigcartel.com. While there, you can also find t-shirts, koozies, coffee mugs, stickers, and a bunch of other stuff. This first edition has been exclusively limited to only 806 copies. Obviously, a nod to the Panhandle area code and all the 806ers out there. Links to the merch store, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, they'll also be in the show notes. Again, go buy a copy of The Lubbock Way, a collection of wallflower vignettes by me, Thomas Mooney. All right, let's get back to the episode.
I guess maybe the older I get, I'm more fascinated by, you know, the X-Acto knife and I remember I had Clint Black on one time, and he was talking about making like word webs, basically. Like, oh, let's I can't remember exactly what they're called, but you know, like we have a word, and then we're gonna exhaust and like draw lines off of it, and that sounds like, you know, we're dismantling the romanticism of anyone writing a song, like, you know, just coming right off the top of the head or something. But that's what I find amazing is kind of realizing that these songs aren't necessarily always just taken from the ether, you know, that there is work, and there's this like,
Oh yeah,
you know, interesting ways to skin the cat.
And that is an interesting. I haven't done that in a long time, but there was a period in my life where I was doing that exercise, that word web, where you basically have the central theme of the song, and then you have things that stem off from that. So it could be, okay, the central theme is a bar. Anything that relates to a bar, you know, booze, money, you know, your bar tab, people, you know, girls, romance, dancing, music. Okay, then you go to the money thing. You know, the guy's broke and can't, you know, whatever. Then you go to the beer thing. You got whiskey, but you know, so then you start to kind of stem off of that, and then what it really essentially does is now you have a paper with all things that are related to the central theme, and so it's just kind of like it creates a word bank for you. So when you're stuck, you're like, all right, well, let's talk about the girl dancing, because now we already talked about the thing, and maybe the bar is not a great example, but just to get the listeners an idea of how that works. Yeah. And it creates a word bank for you. And that proved to be pretty successful when I was kind of still trying to figure out how to write songs. I think I do that still, but in my head, I don't really need to write it out. But that was always a great exercise. One thing that Radney would always make me do when I was still in college is just like free write. He would like write like half a page anything. Like
Yeah.
it just keep it a constant stream of thoughts, and it was most of the time it wouldn't make much sense. But then you're like, whoa, that's kind of, you listen, you read that line, like, wow, that's actually really poetic. That's actually like a really cool thought. And then you take that and you put it in a song somewhere. But it's just kind of like you vomit anything that comes to your brain. Your brain's hard to keep up with, man. The human mind is like such an interesting thing. So if you force yourself to just put stuff out on paper, you'll be surprised at how cool some of your thoughts are when you don't think about it.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking about it in that moment. But when you see it on paper, then it's just like, I don't know, maybe we just went down a really weird rabbit hole. But it's the truth, man. This is within the mind of a songwriter.
I know, like, during the pandemic, a lot of people that I talked with talked about doing more of the free writing, where it was like, first thing you get out when they got up, just write. And then I guess, like, somebody had compared it to when you got, like, a pen and the inks, you got to run it back and forth before the ink starts coming out. That being kind of applying that to the free writing. And then, you kind of get all the cobwebs knocked out. And then you can kind of think a little bit more clearly, and then, go back and pick stuff out. Because, again, like, I think, like, that's probably something you've learned is you can't judge something before you say it. Because, like, it's so easy to just say, I'm not going to say that because I don't want to sound stupid, And sometimes you just have to say it to then get around whatever you're trying to say.
And that's kind of how I am, man. And I'll tell you a really funny story. Like a couple years ago, I had the opportunity to write with Jamie Johnson, who I'm a very big fan of. And we're pretty good buddies now, so I know he won't care if I tell this story. But I came to his house, right? And I'm definitely kind of intimidated. And I wrote this. I'd stayed up the whole night before with this. I wrote this whole, like, half of a song, everything chorus, and it's like I remember it was like a fighting song, like this girl and guy knock down, drag out, and she's throwing plates at him and smashing, and he's kicking a hole in the door or whatever, and I wanted it to be like a real outlaw country song, and I sing him this whole song like. I can't remember how it went, but it was like, well, it ain't the first time I've heard you scream and shout. It ain't the first time we've cussed each other out. We walk a fine line, done it time and time again. And it ain't the first time my words have made you bawl. It ain't the first time I've kicked a hole right through the wall. I'm making it like, man, he's pissed off, punching a hole in the wall and everything. And then he goes, I like that, but I think we can say all that in one line. And I was like, shit. That whole thing, those whole two verses, he's like, yeah. How do you say that in one line? He's like, broken plates and drywall scars. I said, fuck, that's cool. And so now we start going off this thing, and he likes the idea, and he kind of liked the chorus that I brought, but he completely trashed the verses I showed up with. But I was just glad he was into it, right? And so now I can see the gears in his head starting to turn. Now I've kind of woken him up, and so he starts going, and he's like real quiet, and I'm just still really intimidated. And he had this open notebook, and he's like drawing these, like he had a pen, and he was drawing these circles like over and over again next to each other. It almost looked like a cluster of grapes or something. And I, like you're saying, like I'm throwing shit out there, like, hey, well, what if we did this? No. Well, what did you think of this line? And he was just sitting there. And, after about 2 or 3 minutes of me just throwing shit on the wall, he's like, can you just give me a minute to think? And I was like, oh, my God. And I got scared. Like, I thought, like, he kind of, and I was like, okay. And I, like, got up from the table, and I, like, went on his couch and, like, was playing with his dogs and shit, and I left him alone for, like, 15 minutes. Because I was like, okay, all right, I got the point, got the hint, and he comes like, hey, come back over here, and I walk back over there, and he's like, what do you think of this? And he sings this whole thing, and it was fucking brilliant, dude. And I was like, so that's what you do. You sit there and you doodle and you think about it, and you don't say anything until you're exactly sure that's what you want to say.
Yeah.
instead of me over here like, hey, Jamie, like, what do you think of this? What do you, just chirping away at him like a damn chihuahua barking up a tree. And it's just like, and he's done it for so long. It was just a different. So I learned a lot that day. And then we wrote that part, and then we broke for lunch, and then we came back and we finished it. And it's such a cool song. I'd hope that it's so him. I hope he cuts it someday. But I always tell people that story of him just being like, can you give me a second to just think?
Yeah.
And I said, yes, sir. My bad. All right. I'm going to fuck off over here. It's cool.
Yeah.
And I'd love to write with him again. And I think the most bizarre part of that story was he's like, I hadn't written a song in 10 years. He told me that. I was like, are you serious? And I was like, why'd you pick me to write, to get back into it? And he's like, I really don't know. And I said, okay, I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult, but I'll take it, man. And it's cool, man. I would love to write with him again. But again, it was one of those first dates where I was like, holy shit. I called my manager after that. I was like, man, that was a weird fucking thing. But we wrote a great song.
Man, that's hilarious.
Oh yeah, I see him about once a year, but
Yeah.
he's always good to me, man. He's such a sweetheart.
Yeah. Before you get out of here, let's talk a little bit about what you got coming up next. Obviously, you just released a new single this week. What's kind of like in your 22 plans as far as you got a record?
Yeah, we got a new EP that's coming out in April, and then we're gonna hit the studio again. Actually, I've got a bunch of other songs that we're planning on making a whole nother EP. There for a minute, I was wanting to make a full length and combine the two, but the thing is the record that's about to come out, or it was the record that I was really supposed to make before the pandemic, and so these songs have been kicking around for a while. We've been playing them, and they feel like they belong on their own in their own sort of body of work. And these new songs that I've been writing the past couple months are so fresh to me and to the band, and we're all excited to be playing them. So I want that to be its own thing, to stand on its own. But yeah, there's a lot of new music coming out, and I'm really, really stoked for. So yeah, I just encourage people to kind of keep up with me and the guys, and come see a show, come hang out and listen to the songs. It's what I love to do, and I'm just glad to be back in Lubbock, Texas, doing it.
Yeah, man. I mean, the EP thing, and the pandemic. That's obviously, as you know, you're around the songs a lot longer than the listener ever is going to be. The pandemic threw like a weird, strange wrench in it that made it feel so much longer.
Oh yeah,
and so much more. There's so many people I know who obviously they put off a record, and then it's like, well, fuck, man, we should have just put the record out because I'm already over these songs.
Yeah.
And, it's going to be an interesting, weird, strange time to look back upon. But it's been a fucking hell of a time talking with you.
Dude, man, thank you so much, man. I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get a beer or something.
Yeah, let's do that.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right, that's it for this episode. Thank y'all for listening. Be sure to keep an eye out for new music from William Beckmann, and be sure to go see him if he comes to a city near you. Check out our presenting partners over at Desert Door, The Blue Light Live, and Charlie Stout Photography. And be sure to order a copy of my debut book, The Lubbock Way. And yeah, I'll see y'all soon for another episode of New Slang.